Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be going over the history and geography of County Antrim in Northern Ireland. Now I know what a lot of you are thinking right now, and it's going to be addressed in the video. It's a big part of this county's history is the issue of Northern Ireland itself. And I would say before you leave an angry comment about how there is no Northern Ireland, etc., etc., like I said, it will be addressed. Just relax. This is a relaxation video. It will be discussed. Don't worry. I will say, though, there is a huge difference between the island of Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And, the UK and Northern Ireland, etc. Sorry for the airplane outside. So I will be differentiating between those things throughout the video so you can relax, okay? Don't worry. Before we talk about all that messiness, let's talk about this actual county here. The beautiful, beautiful corner of the world. It has some incredible features in its geography. Starting with probably the most famous, the Giant's Causeway, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So let's start off our video talking about that. Let me slide my tablet over. We can talk about the Giant's Causeway and the Causeway Coast. The Giant's Causeway lies at the foot of the basalt cliffs along the seacoast on the edge of the Antrim Plateau in Northern Ireland. It is made up of some 40,000 massive black basalt columns sticking out of the sea. The dramatic sight has inspired legends of giants striding over the sea to Scotland. Geological studies of these formations over the last 300 years have greatly contributed to the development of the earth sciences and show that this striking landscape was caused by volcanic activity during the Tertiary, some 50 to 60 million years ago. Let's look at the pictures of it here, because if you've never seen it before, it's quite a sight. It absolutely looks man-made. These big, kind of like hexagon-shaped rocks. That some of them rise up and are very tall. Some of them just cover the coastline to create these interesting little step shapes that you can climb up. It's really very beautiful and absolutely a place on my bucket list. It's not really a matter of if I go here someday, it's when. I am definitely coming to Ireland, and Northern Ireland, and in particular the Giant's Causeway. And I'll also tell you what I definitely have to see. It's a must. Besides the Giant's Causeway, it's in the city of Belfast here. The majority of Belfast is in Antrim. The rest is in County Down. I think all of the official government buildings are in County Down, but most of Belfast proper is in County Antrim. And this is where the Titanic was built. I'm obsessed with the Titanic, if you don't know. They have a museum here called the Titanic Experience. I absolutely have to go there someday. So Antrim's on my bucket list for a variety of reasons. But there's so many other things to see besides the Giant's Causeway and the Titanic Museum. There are some beautiful valleys that kind of cover this part of the landscape here, known as the glens. One of those effects of glaciers receding and wearing down from the sea waves and waters over the years creates these amazing valleys up in here. You can see the glens of Antrim right there. course, there are beautiful forests and trees, all green and lovely. Many of which we're going to see when we go over Google Earth were used for locations in Game of Thrones, that TV show. If you've seen it, I have. I thought it's great. They're not going to talk about the last season. But probably, like, looking at this map, the most obvious feature is this huge lake here, which I've tried to draw the borders in between. This is Loch Ness, which is the largest lake in, I believe it's the largest lake in the island of Ireland by volume, and the largest lake in the United Kingdom. It's pretty cool. Definitely by volume, I'm not sure by size. For Ireland at least. I know for the UK it is. And let me see. Anything else I need to mention? All the various little towns. Antrim is right here on the shores of Loch Ness. We're also going to talk about Carrickfergus here, which I believe in Ireland is more like Carrickfergus than Carrickfergus, like it is in American English. I am pronouncing everything in American English, by the way, because I'm American. I also have some Irish ancestry, but that doesn't give me any credibility. Listen, out of all of my videos, the Irish are the meanest, but coming from an Irish background, I understand that Irish negativity comes from a place of love for the most part. It's like a compliment if you get nagged at, so it's fine. If you want to rip me to shreds, Irish people, I totally understand. So let's get into the rough history of this place. Now, first of all, I'm going to skip over quite a bit of details because I don't want this to be 2 hours long. I'm going to skip over, for example, the clans I'm not going to talk about because there's just so many in this part of Ireland. Clans were families with a title and name to themselves. They usually lived in castles in their respective towns, and they intermarried, they governed, etc., etc. Kind of like in Game of Thrones, but real. So I'm not really going to talk about that. It's a big part of its history, but we're not going to get into the intricacies of the various clans that lived here. Just as an example of something I'm going to skip over that I can think of right now. But let's start off way back in the early Celtic period. The people that lived here were known as the Darini, which we don't know much about. The Celts and the Druids that lorded over them did not have a written language. But I thought it was interesting that Darini is the root word for the Welsh word for rage. So it's believed that these people were quite angry and they will fight you, apparently. It's also probably the Celtic tribe that enslaved a guy named Patrick near Ballymena here. And they did have slaves back then. But I believe he escaped and fled to, gosh, I don't know the exact, either Britain or mainland Europe, where he became Christian and came back and brought Christianity to Ireland, and he's now known today as Saint Patrick. Big part of Irish history here. There were quite a bit of Viking raids in this part of Ireland between the 8th and 11th centuries, not as bad as other parts of Ireland and Britain. But in the 12th century, the AngloNormans invaded here. Now I'm sure you're going, wait, don't you mean Anglo-Saxons? No. These are the ancestors of the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons came into what's now England, officially invading in 1066, taking over, establishing their own rules and government and ways of doing things and laws that still exist today. The current king, Charles III, is the direct descendant of William I, Anglo-Saxon king. So they became the Anglo-Normans because those Anglo-Saxon people were from a place called Normandy, which is in France now. So officially known as the Normans, becoming the Anglo-Normans, the English Normans. Makes sense. So the Anglo-Normans invaded this part of Ireland in the 12th century. They ruled for about 100-ish years or so, give and take, before the Irish began to push them out. And the only spot that they retained by the year 1315 was Carrickfergus here. It was the only English town in an Irish island. Now the British, which they would eventually become, had, and still have to an extent, a view of that Ireland rightly belongs to them. It's just something that they've had in their mindset for pretty much 1,000 years at this point. And it was, pretty violent in terms of how they attempted to take over Ireland multiple times. It replayed up in Scotland as well. And eventually they came to the idea that if you can't beat them, join them, or more sinisterly assimilate with them and slowly take over. So many people from England just moved casually into the county, and many other parts of Ireland, but mostly up here. They also came from Scotland, but I just learned that in my research like last week. I always knew them as like the English that came. And they were known as the planters. That's not because they were there planting crops, which they probably were planting crops, let's be real. This is like the 1500s at the start of it. But they're known as planters because they planted themselves into the country, into the culture, into society here. And just being like, we live here now, and slowly but surely assert their influence here. And by influence, by the 1500s, I mean their religion. Long story short, King Henry VIII, over in England, wanted to divorce his wife. You can't divorce in Catholicism. So he started his own branch of Christianity called Anglicanism. So he could divorce his wife and divorce many more after that. So it was part of the Protestant Reformation. So from what I can tell, like just from experience and research, people in Northern Ireland who are not Catholic don't really call themselves Anglican, they call themselves Protestant. And I wonder if that's a way to separate themselves from England just a little bit. Not all the way, just a little bit. So Anglicanism is part of the Protestant Reformation, but people in Antrim and other parts of Ireland that are Christian but not Catholic are Protestant. So keep that in mind. Now, the majority of Ireland at this time was still Catholic. They had nothing to do with Henry VIII ever since St. Patrick brought it over. So there was a bit of a clash between Catholics and Protestants, not just in how their religion should be practiced, which is quite different, but culturally as well, because that Protestant belief came from Britain, England. So a bit of a clash there, right? It really started to come to a head at the very early 1600s. There were quite a few wars throughout the island of Ireland. The ones that mainly affected Antrim, mainly the 9 Years' War, ended in 1603 with an English victory. kind of reasserted that English, not officially, well, kind of officially. It's around this time that it became officially Great Britain, but more of like culturally and religiously, right? Belfast was established in 1613. It was primarily a place that manufactured linen, among other things, but that was number one. And that would expand as the Industrial Revolution rose in the UK to include shipbuilding, which is how we get the Titanic that was built there in the very early 1900s. So the UK was taking over Ireland, right? A lot's happening over in England at this point. Their kings are being beheaded, revolution is sparking up, and the people taking over England didn't treat people from Scotland and Ireland, and Wales to a lesser extent, very well. And the people there rose up. And you best believe that the Irish rose up, very much so. Eventually being inspired by the revolutions in America and France, they waged a massive insurrection, which on paper was not successful, but in the minds of the people, they knew that they had that power to rise up and take back what's theirs, right? It all really came to a head in 1921, when the United Kingdom was like, something needs to be done. It's getting more and more violent, definitely down in Dublin, down there. And it's becoming just all-out territorial violence, right, in Ireland. Something needs to be done. So they thought, listen, we're going to let the Catholic parts of Ireland have their independence. You're the Irish Free State now. You can do whatever you want. But the parts that are majority Protestant, we're going to keep part of the UK. And that's when the division was drawn between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. So Northern Ireland officially became part of the UK. One of the 4 countries of the United Kingdom. And Ireland became the Republic of Ireland. Became its own thing. Now, of course, many, I'd say majority of Irish people then and today still consider Northern Ireland as part of the Republic of Ireland. And it's one of those things like, on paper, it's not, right? Politically, it's not. But mentally, I would definitely say so. From what I can tell, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you're from Northern Ireland, or the UK, that the people here, they're Irish. It's not like they're not British. They're not, mentally associated with like England per se, but they're Irish, right? Irish as in Irish, not Irish. If you catch my drift. But anyway, Belfast was made the capital of Northern Ireland at that time as well. And in the 1940s, that became an issue for Belfast because it was a target of German bombings known as the Blitz. Belfast was bombed quite a bit between 1941 and 1942. But once World War II ended and the dust cleared from that, it was very easy to rebuild those parts that had been destroyed into big modern industries and things like that. Belfast really started to grow in the 1950s. But politically, other things began to grow as well, and that was Irish nationalism and conflicts between Catholics and Protestants, where at this point it's not so much the culture that Protestant is British and Catholicism is Irish. Irish. It was more about religious differences at this point. Even though it's another thing, like on paper, it's the same religion, but there's so much more to it. It's so much more complicated. And we're not going to get into it. But this tension sparked an era known as the Troubles, where mostly in Northern Ireland, of course, but in other counties bordering it, excessive violence broke out between Catholic groups, Protestant groups, rebel groups, anarchist groups, etc., etc. I'm not sure what YouTube is going to consider no-no words, so we're just going to leave it at that. But there were many bombings, mainly around Belfast and other parts in Antrim. And this was when the peace walls were constructed in major towns in Northern Ireland and County Antrim to separate the Catholic communities from the Protestant communities. Some of them still stand today. You can go see them. There's a really great film called Belfast by Kenneth Branagh that I highly recommend because it's about his childhood in Belfast during the Troubles. Highly recommend. It's a beautiful film if you want to learn more about that time. But negotiations occurred in the 1990s, and in 1998 the Good Friday Agreement was signed that unofficially, officially ended the Troubles. It ended the Troubles, right? It didn't end that ethnic and religious tension per se, but it officially ended the violence. And it's pretty much where we are today in County Antrim. So why don't I grab Google Earth and show you some places. Here we go. I'm really zoomed in right now. Let me zoom it out a bit. Now it does a really terrible job of trying to show you where we are. It doesn't show you the counties in Northern Ireland, but it definitely shows you the ones in the Republic of Ireland, doesn't it? It's doing my best here. But we gotta start off at the Giant's Causeway, right? Head for, no, not that far. Where'd it go? Hello. Alright, I've adjusted my tablet a little more. Google Earth's doing that thing where it doesn't want to load place names, so I'm kind of on my own. But I know that the Giant's Causeways are on these cliffs, yeah. You can see how sharp and extreme these cliffs are here. And let's take a look. Absolutely gorgeous, right? Look at these. So the legend is that a giant named Finn McCool constructed this. There's so many stories about Finn McCool. He was heading off to Scotland to fight another giant. But if I remember the story, I'm sure it's told many different ways, that once the other giant in Scotland saw what he was doing here, he gave up. Saw that he was building a big bridge. Actually, I think, what was it? Didn't he throw a stone or something and it became the Isle of Man? Something like that. I don't quite remember. Someone will tell me, I'm sure. But, yeah, it's very unreal. You can imagine why there's so much mythology around this place. Because, you know, it's been there for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. That the early peoples here would have been like, what in the world? That there's no way that it's natural. And nothing's popping up. There we go. Some things are popping up, but not very much. Goodness gracious. See, if I zoom out, there's supposed to be a little box that says it's the Causeway Heritage Site, but absolutely nothing's popping up. Of course it isn't. But I would encourage you to go on Google Earth and play around on the Over here you can see the Dark Hedges, which is a really neat spot, which is, come on, beautiful tree-lined walkway, which if you recognize that, very cool. It was a scene in Game of Thrones with Arya traveling with Gendry. Love Gendry. Anyway, let's see what else we can find. Let's look at the glens. I know it's very hard to describe them, right? Let's look at the glens. There's the coastline. So it's these big rolling valleys. Of course, there's a very famous precarious bridge that I will never step foot on. But we have beautiful waterfalls. Lots of little towns and things too. There's a goat. What in the world is that? Let's see. Oh, the sign's kind of ruined. But it's a goat. Old castles, of course. Oh, so pretty. It's one of those fairy tale parts of Ireland. There are lots of places in Ireland that are very fairy tale-like. But it's definitely one of them. Wish there were better pictures. Oh, that's a pretty house, even though it's kind of all beat up. It's still very beautiful. Let's see if we can't find another box. Probably not. But you can see from above these incredible valleys here. Amazing formations here. Let's see if this has any pictures. Breen oak wood. Oh, how cool. Very nice. Oh, it's so lovely. It's one of those places like, fairies live here, without a doubt. Not quite Tara. It's much further south, but still there's something magical happening in places like that. Let's look at the actual town of Antrim that the county's named after. Look how big it is. Very deep lake also. There's Antrim. There's a very cool old castle here. Actually, let's look at the old castle. Let's see. Antrim Castle grounds. Let's see it from above. Very pretty. Old garden there. Beautiful little bridge there over the water. Very old tower, which from what I can tell is probably part of the original castle, right? Probably all that's left standing of it. But very pretty. There's a dog. There's some else. Oh look, you put your hands there and make a wish. There's an old mound. My goodness, that looks man-made, doesn't it? I wonder if there's anything under that mound. There's also fairies here. I would be careful walking under that. It's probably a fairy trap. Let's see. Look how pretty it's all laid out. The old castle grounds. Now this is terrifying. I was looking at this. This is very scary. But it says, lick your dummy on the tongue, then drop it in the drum. Which sounds very sinister if you don't understand what that means. So in British, Irish, English, a dummy is a lollipop. We call them in America. So they're saying, eat your lollipop and then put it in the trash. Well, give him a lick of it. I just wish there was a less sinister way of saying that. It sounds very ominous in American English to say it like that. Look, neat. Let's look at this. The church in Holy Well. What does that mean? Oh, how pretty. That's a very old church. I know that the church St. Patrick established is probably still around here, and I wonder if that was one of the early ones, the Cranfield Church. There's lots of little doodads left around. very Japanese. But yeah. And old stone too. Do you think there's anything? I didn't actually look at Palomino. Let's see. Oh, pretty. Perfect for the season. I can't. Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's just random pictures that are still nice. But let's finish this by looking at Belfast. Let's head down the coastline here. And you can already see the Titanic is front and center here on Google Earth. So you can see the big capital here of Northern Ireland. Let's start off here. You can see the big shipyards here too, where many, many ships have been built over time, and some are still there. Of course, I say that, and you don't see any. Where are they? Oh, there's one. HMS Caroline's right there. But here is the Titanic experience here in the Titanic Quarter. A big museum here. The Titanic docks, where the Titanic was built. This beautiful museum here. I can't wait to go someday. This is where the Titanic was built. Let's see. Come on, let's go inside. There we go. A little recreation of what once was on board the ship. A little placard there. Ooh, some kind of old timepiece. Surely recovered. I think there's only 2 museums that actually have actual factual Titanic wreckage on display, and obviously this is one of them. The other's in Branson, Missouri. There's a lifeboat there. Oh my gosh, can you imagine? I can't wait to come here someday. There's another ship, the Nomadic, looking kind of rusty. Oh, also, everything I read said that you have to go see the big fish when you're in Belfast. You're thinking, what is the big fish? It's a big fish. It's a big old fishy guy. But what's neat is that when you look closer, it's a mosaic of all little historic inscriptions, probably about the history of Belfast. How neat is that? So it's a big old fishy art piece, but it also tells a lot of history as well. It's everything I read said you have to go see the big fish. Here's Bobby Sands. Very important figure during the Troubles here. This building. But let's finish this by looking at the Ulster Museum, because most of Northern Ireland is historically known as Ulster. So this is the Ulster Museum. They got dinosaurs here. That looks like Ducky from Land Before Time. And some dragons, of course. Beautiful Celtic cross here. The old ancient moosey guy. What his bones are and what he would have looked like. These giant antlers. T-Rex, it looks like, or something similar. The Iron Throne, because Game of Thrones tourism is really big in County Antrim, apparently. So many beautiful butterflies. Moths, too, probably. A bear. A dog. Look at this, it's a periodic table. An actual periodic table. How cool is that? Some kind of statue arm. That's terrifying. Oh yeah, also, speaking of terrifying, let me get out of this. That's horrible. I think there's some mummies in this slideshow, so be prepared if you don't like to see actual, like, dead bodies, just so you know. Also the terrifying giant crab. Yep, here we go. Mummies. Probably bog bodies, maybe. There's one more, I think. Let me see. Wow. I guess not. Maybe not that slideshow. Okay. No more bodies, don't worry. so much more to see in this part of Ireland. I highly recommend playing. Let's see if any more Giant's Causeway slideshows want to pop up, because like 10 of them appeared when I was researching. Here we go. Causeway Coast Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty. Let's end it here. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this wasn't too polarizing or weirdly political for my Irish viewers, but I know there's going to be angry comments. Just try to be a little nice. I'm doing my best here, not trying to go into graphic details about things, and trying to make them relaxing and YouTube friendly. So let's be a little nicer than usual in the comments. Apparently the Irish can't resist being a little rude, but that's Irish culture. It's whatever. But if you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing. This is an ongoing series on my channel. And next, if you thought the harbor in Belfast was cool, just you wait, because tomorrow we're going to Belgium. And if you know, you know. That's enough clues to tell you where exactly we're going in Belgium. To one of the largest harbors, dockyards in the world. Not the largest, that's a little farther north, but never mind. Be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a good